let's talk about secrets. Not the juicy, gossip-worthy kind, but the deep, quiet ones that live in the hearts and minds of women everywhere. What if I told you that beneath the surface of composure, independence, and even professed disinterest, there lies a universal thread of desire and fantasy that many women possess, yet feel compelled to keep hidden? It's a paradox, isn't it? In an age of supposed sexual liberation, why do so many women still guard their innermost erotic thoughts? As a psychologist, I've spent years listening, observing, and delving into the complexities of human desire, and what I've discovered is a fascinating, often frustrating landscape of female sexuality shaped by millennia of societal whispers, expectations, and the ever-present internalized gaze of the other. Think about it for a moment, as Margaret Atwood so poignantly observed, even pretending you aren't catering to male fantasies is a male fantasy. You are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur. This powerful statement cuts right to the core of a deeply ingrained psychological experience for many women. It suggests that our self-perception, our very sense of being a woman, can become tainted with a toxic perspective due to constant societal reinforcement. We learn to see ourselves through an imagined male lens, becoming our own internal observers, constantly monitoring how we appear, what we say, and even what we desire, based on what we anticipate men might see or expect. This isn't some abstract philosophical concept. It plays out in our everyday lives in countless subtle and overt ways. I've heard women describe feeling the need to consider how a man will view me in this outfit, or how he will act if I unbutton the top button. It extends to how they phrase their opinions, constantly strategizing, what must I say to counter this so that I can be respected and taken seriously. This constant self-surveillance means that even when a woman believes she's expressing her authentic self, there can be a silent, internal editor, refining her performance to fit a deeply internalized script. It's like having a tiny invisible critic perched on your shoulder, whispering judgments and expectations, making you a constant voyeur of your own life. This phenomenon is deeply rooted in what we call sexual scripts, the unspoken, culture-specific guidelines that dictate normal and acceptable sexual behaviors. In Western societies, and certainly in the United States, these scripts have long cast men as the pursuers and women as the pursued, often assigning women a passive role in heterosexual encounters. From childhood, girls are taught a very different language of desire than boys. Boys often grow up in a world where expressing sexual interest is straightforward. If you want something, you say it or make a move. For girls, the message is far more nuanced, even contradictory. We're told to be modest, not too easy, and to wait for men to initiate. This conditioning often entangles sexual expression with shame, leading many women to feel disconnected from their own desires. It's a perplexing paradox in our supposedly sexually liberated society. On one hand, there's a widespread cultural message encouraging women to embrace their desires and enjoy their sexuality freely. Yet, simultaneously, a pervasive fear of judgment lingers, inhibiting many from fully doing so. Imagine the internal conflict. A woman who dreams of adventurous intimacy, perhaps exploring new forms of desire or even experimenting with partners, only to have those thoughts immediately clouded by questions like, what will my friends think? Or am I overstepping boundaries? This constant questioning leads to a suppression of desires, trapping many in a cycle of unfulfillment. This tension between outward expression and inner truth is a significant factor in what's sometimes called the orgasm gap in heterosexual relationships. Research from 2017 found that lesbians orgasmed 86% of the time during sex, compared to only 65% of straight women and 95% of straight men. This isn't necessarily a biological issue. Catherine Rowland's book, The Pleasure Gap, revealed that for many women, low desire was less about biology and more about partners, routines, incomplete sexual education, and boredom. It raises a critical question. Why is it often assumed that women are responsible for spicing up sex? And why is their orgasm frequently seen as a bonus rather than an integral part of the experience? It's no wonder then that so many women report faking orgasms. Studies indicate that 80% of heterosexual women fake orgasm during vaginal intercourse about half the time, and another 25% fake them almost all the time. In one informal survey, friends admitted it was easier sometimes, or a way to get it just over when they weren't feeling it. When asked why they didn't simply tell their partners, the unspoken understanding was often that it would become an issue if it happened every time, or because society often treats faking as a funny anecdote, focusing on men's bruised egos rather than the profound orgasm gap. The reality is, many women feel uncomfortable talking to their intimate partners about sex and their sexual desires due to embarrassment, not knowing how to ask, not wanting to seem demanding, or fearing rejection, or being seen as perverted. Younger women, particularly those aged 18-24, often struggle even more to find their sexual voice. This brings us to the fascinating, often misunderstood realm of sexual fantasy. It's a nearly universal human experience, varying by gender, age, and orientation. And here's where we get to the heart of the fantasy every woman has. While men's fantasies often lean towards visual imagery, explicit anatomical detail, and casual encounters, women's fantasies tend to be more focused on emotional connection, intimacy, and often center around a single individual with whom they have a shared history or desire a long-term relationship. But here's the kicker: submissive fantasies are remarkably common among women. Studies have repeatedly found that themes of being overpowered or forced to surrender are frequent in women's sexual fantasies. A 1974 study ranked it as the second most frequent. A 1984 study called it the most common during intercourse, and a 1988 study found over half of female respondents fantasized about forced sex. This preference is so notable that one dissertation aimed to understand what predicts submissive fantasies for women. The findings repeatedly support that women have a significantly greater interest in submissive sexual fantasy than do men. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, it is absolutely crucial to understand that these fantasies in no way imply a desire for actual sexual assault or non-consensual sex. In fact, these fantasies often contain romantic elements, where the imagined male is desirable, and most importantly, the woman remains in full control of her fantasy. There's typically no involvement of actual physical harm. Think of it like watching a thrilling action movie. You might enjoy the drama and excitement, but you wouldn't want to actually be in a car chase or a fist fight. It's visual junk food for the lizard brain, as one Reddit user put it, something that appeals on a primal level but is distinctly separate from real-world desires. So, why are these fantasies so prevalent? One of the most frequently cited hypotheses is that such fantasies allow women to avoid societally induced guilt. In a culture that has historically taught women to be chaste and selective, to save oneself, and where giving away sex can depreciate a woman's value, fantasizing about being forced into sex can relieve a woman of the perceived responsibility for her own sexual desires and behaviors. If sex is a commodity, as some theories suggest, then being so irresistible that sex is taken from you forcibly offers a way to experience desire without actively seeking pleasure, which might be seen as unfeminine or perverted. This aligns with a broader societal pressure that teaches girls from a young age that their value is tied to their attractiveness and desirability to men. We socialize girls into a practice of femininity that writes their sexual desire out of existence, prioritizing being sexually appealing over being sexually self-aware. So, a submissive fantasy becomes a way to walk that narrow line. It allows women to be sexy and sexually active, but still stay within the confines of femininity, as defined by the heterosexual script. It's a delicate dance between expressing and concealing, a strategic navigation of a world where female desire is constantly lured by discourses that sustain male privilege. This dynamic creates what some term enlightened sexism, where women can fantasize about their own sexual submission while maintaining the belief that they are in control of this decision, often referred to in the BDSM community as topping from the bottom. This perspective, however, risks overlooking the profound impact of socialization and the internalized masculine view of sex that can legitimate women's role as sex objects. It means that even women who identify as feminists and actively challenge mainstream cultural norms regarding heterosexualization may not entirely escape the effects of this dominant culture. The eroticization of male dominance, as Catherine McKinnon argues, creates a conundrum where women come to want their own self-annihilation or subordination, not because it's truly in their interest, but because femininity as we know it is how we come to want male dominance. This is a powerful, if disturbing, insight into the depths of internalized societal conditioning. Beyond the specific content of fantasies, the very act of a woman desiring, and especially desiring openly, can be seen as problematic within traditional frameworks. Freud famously pondered, "What does a woman want?" A question Lacan later echoed, not by asking, but by asserting that there is no such thing as the woman in a universal sense, as her identity is often defined in relation to man as an other. This implies that women's desire is often structured along patriarchal lines, a desire to be for others, rather than a self-referential, autonomous desire. This profound lack of an autonomous subject position for women means that even when a woman wants something else, she may not be able to articulate it because it falls outside the existing logic of the symbolic, the available discourses that define reality. It's unrepresented, seemingly unrepresentable. This isn't just theory. It's the daily experience of women struggling to define themselves beyond traditional roles. Consider the superwoman myth often promoted in post-feminist media, portraying women who supposedly have it all, a successful career and a happy, loving family. This narrative subtly implies that any failure to achieve this ideal is an individual shortcoming, a matter of poor time management, rather than a reflection of systemic inequalities or the immense, often invisible burden of domestic and emotional labor. Women are still overwhelmingly responsible for childcare, household management, and even mothering men, taking on the emotional labor for their partners. This expectation to be other-centric and considerate means that being I-centered is often seen as unacceptable for women, especially in relationships. The relentless focus on others can lead to an erasure of self for women, where their own feelings and thoughts simply don't seem to ever really count. This constant negotiation between inner desire and outer expectation, between an authentic self and a socially acceptable performance, takes a toll. It contributes to feelings of guilt and selfishness when women prioritize their own needs. It means that many women develop a subtle, almost coded language of desire. They won't explicitly say, "I'm horny," but they might send multiple selfies, find excuses to sit closer or hold eye contact longer than usual. They might compliment your shirt or ask about your past relationships. These are their ways of signaling emotional interest and attraction. Men who truly connect with women aren't necessarily the ones who talk dirty the fastest, but those who can pick up on these small signals, who create a space for a woman's desire to emerge without pressure. When she feels emotionally safe, she begins to let go and reveal a different side of herself. However, if these subtle cues are missed, or if a woman is rushed, pushed, or expected to prove her desire too quickly, she shuts down. This isn't teasing. It's a defensive mechanism born from a profound fear of being misunderstood, judged, or seen as too much. The external pressure to conform to traditional feminine appearances, even in roles supposedly associated with tough girls or superwomen, means that being sexy is often mediated by other expectations. A woman can be a tough girl with a gun, but she still needs to be sexy, wearing stilettos and having an unbelievable figure. This seemingly empowering image can still reproduce a woman as man construction or a sexualized object that appeals to masculine fantasy rather than reflecting true female autonomy. This elaborate charade of femininity, this constant monitoring and adapting, this suppression of explicit desire in favor of subtle cues, reveals a deeper truth. Women's desire is deeply felt, powerful, and utterly authentic, but it often operates in a hidden mode due to the pervasive patriarchal structure that still shapes our world. The pretending is not a deliberate act of manipulation, but a learned survival strategy, a way to navigate a society that often demonizes or trivializes authentic female sexuality. So, What does this all mean for us, as individuals seeking genuine connection, and as a society striving for true equality? It means we need to recognize the profound psychic cost that these ingrained patterns inflict upon women. It means understanding that the silence around female desire isn't a lack of feeling, but a testament to the powerful, often invisible forces that regulate women's inner lives. It means creating spaces where women feel genuinely safe to articulate their desires in all their complexity and individuality, without fear of judgment, shame, or misinterpretation. Only then can we move beyond the pretense and truly embrace the full spectrum of human desire.